Hi, it's Steve and Joe from Freshagenda, now part of ever.ag, Steve. It's
Very
pretty
exciting.
exciting.
Mm.
And we're back with our not very weekly take. And today we've got a bit of background, some updates on what's happening around the traps. Of course, GDT number 342 and everybody's favourite chart of the week.
Yep.
Let's get into it.
Some updates, some big data updates from the EU, with production, slowly declining. But the interesting stuff, I think, is down below where, we've seen these product mix changes continue to evolve.
Yeah, so that's the corresponding manufactured production for August, which is what the milk production is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And it's showing that 6.3 and last month output changes in tonnes. Small changes. I was a little surprised skim milk powder revived a little bit, which is all about where the milk is growing.
That's right, yeah. And but most of it obviously going into cheese steak. But the other interesting thing, we keep seeing this trend towards higher components than volume, don't we? So there is a little bit more protein and fat in that milk.
Absolutely, about 1.5% more. So that's why we are seeing growth. So the exports out of the EU still picking up on last year, still behind prior years, obviously. 22 was a pretty low year. For skim, cheese has also kicked up the last few months.
Yeah.
The UK, just separated the UK from other markets there. The UK pretty flat. That has also lifted a little bit in the last few months after hollowing out. But into other markets, the EU is certainly winning share, particularly in the Asian region.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got a bit of an update on an election, Joe, that happened across the ditch from us.
Yeah, New Zealand election happened last Saturday on the 14th. Labor out of power. The Nationals will form a coalition with some other parties, ACT, which is on the right wing. Labor also lost some seats to the left. So we're trying to still work out what it all means. The Nationals platform beforehand, they had recommitted to the net zero by 2050, but they had a different view, felt it's going to be more about technology than limiting production. So here are some of the highlights, I suppose: pushing towards fair and sustainable pricing of emissions.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, whatever that means. But push it back. Not willing to lead on this, are they? Which I guess is understandable. Ag stays out of the ETS, which was the same as previously. But the Nationals want to recognise the sequestration in soils. And they've also put a bit of a kibosh on forestry conversions, which have been pretty, when you look at the balance sheet for carbon in New Zealand, forestry has actually been a fairly important factor in them achieving those goals. So that's an interesting one. And the other interesting one is there's been I guess a moratorium on genetic modification in New Zealand. It's part of the pure, imagery, I guess, particularly for New Zealand dairy. Nationals want to use that technology to help address the issues of reducing emissions. So it'll be interesting to see what the attitude of Fonterra and others in the dairy industry will be to that.
Who've clung to a non-GM policy for a long time.
Absolutely.
That will be very interesting. But in New Zealand, it's pretty much, you probably won't get growth without GM technologies.
Well, yeah.
Given the decline in, the footprint.
Yeah.
All right, very interesting.
Keep watching.
GDT 342 was another positive event in the lead up. We had, we've got firming lines there for skim milk powder. So I think butter's really interesting. These are the forward curves prior to those 3 forward curves with the result that occurred, all converging early next year.
Yeah.
Very tightly. I think the EU is, firming. That's the one we're all watching. The internal market in the EU is hesitantly firming, going sideways sometimes, but prices are inching up. Milk is still tight. It's come off a little bit in terms of spot prices, but it's still relatively tight.
Yep.
And well above milk prices. So it is a tightening market, and those export numbers help. that we just
Yeah,
saw.
they sure do.
Skim milk powder futures all forward. Forward curves looking very strong. Whole milk powder similarly. We had a good result last week on Pulse, and that Pulse chart quite different to the way down when we used to joke about the fact that Pulse always caused a dip, or it dipped in as an auction.
It's leading the way up now.
Leading the way up, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so where we were prior to, I mean, we're still seeing some fairly strong, some price rises in other markets. That's the result in summary.
So cheddar was the least positive. I think it edged 0.1% on average.
But all over the shop.
Yeah, negative early contracts and then a bit firmer later on. So,
and that C2 contract in cheddar actually was below the spot barrel price in the US.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's quite negative. But you go from that price, 3,600, up to nearly 42, 4,300 by C5. So it's quite a weird outcome. The powders firm lines, it was good, but it's strange in skim milk powder that after the US had a good result last time, they actually did better than the Fonterra product. This time something happened and they lost. They went backwards. Yeah. Still a premium for European product in skim. Fats are all about, I mean, fats were strong for AMF. You can see the rises for AMF in the short term were quite good. Got a lot to do with the fact that there was product pulled off the exchange at this recent announcement last week. So that usually see AMF prices respond to changes in availability.
More sensitive to that.
Yeah.
And certainly those early contracts are the stronger ones, aren't they?
Absolutely. And you can see that here where those, the line is cascading in forward pricing. Demand was similar. It's very similar to last time. Very similar indeed. That you saw. I know you think this is dull, but it eked out both, keeping price rises pretty good.
Moving right along.
China didn't dominate this again. It's a recurring theme, but 2 events ago they certainly did come back strongly. Not this time. It was left to other regions to support.
This is a positive thing to see, isn't it,
Steve? Yeah, it is.
Southeast Asia coming back a bit more.
Yeah, that is, and that's a good signal. It doesn't tend to last. Look at those lines yo-yo over time, and we'll see how interested they are in where the prices have got to.
Sure.
From here, the Middle East also played harder again. Good sustained line. We may see that for a little while, but the volumes have increased. It'd be interesting to see when we add up trade in a couple of weeks, just what's gone in there in terms of overall trade and whether we think they're at a bit of a limit. China also bought into butter. It's helping keep the butter market firmer, and you can see in the last few events how that's occurred. That synthetic value is still, whole milk powder still below and well below, and that's sustained for several events.
Still a bargain. And
that better pricing for AMF has slashed the discount against butter in half over the last 2 events.
Interesting.
So that's quickly correcting.
Yep.
And it tends to do that. You can see that big jagged chart.
So 4th positive event in a row, Steve.
Yeah, is it a rally?
Seems to be.
Okay. Kiwi farmers certainly would like to think so.
Absolutely.
The spot value of this event went to $8.10. SGX trading at 8, and our full year estimate, which we revised this morning after this event, given forward prices and our forecasts for values, is still a little bit behind that. Okay.
But definitely some upside.
Chart of the week. What have you got?
Chart of the week. Well, I thought we'd skip across to the US. Some commercial disappearance numbers out for August this week, and some fairly strong numbers there for butter, Steve.
Yes. That's a 3-month number.
Yes.
So I tip that's going to fall.
Yeah.
Given we got butter at $7,000 a ton. So yeah.
Yeah. Fairly subdued numbers there for cheese, and we've got a lot of volatility on the US cheese market continuing.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Driven by exports or the lack of exports, or consistency of that, but also some weaker food service business, and that possibly will get worse. Inflation's still around. cost increases for consumers are still coming. There's a lot of things hitting incomes that are yet to wash through. So this might not change much going forward.
That's right.
Great. All right. That's all from us. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon.